Do you really know who you are, or is your entire life being silently manipulated by something you've never dared to face? There's a force inside you. It doesn't scream, it doesn't knock. It waits. It lives in the background of your mind, feeding on your silence, shaping your decisions, destroying your peace and whispering in your relationships. Carl Jung called it the shadow. This shadow isn't a monster, it's everything you've ever denied, rejected or buried. It's your rage that was never allowed, your lust you were told to shame, your power you were taught to fear, and now it's driving you, not consciously. No, that would be too easy. It works from the unconscious, where your thoughts are formed, where your reactions are born. You don't choose your shadow. It chooses you every time you avoid who you really are. You think your anxiety is random. You think your relationship problems are about them. You think your failures are just bad luck. No, they're signals. They're your shadow, begging to be seen and punishing you for ignoring it. Every time you betray yourself to be accepted, your shadow grows. Every time you lie to appear good, it smiles. Every time you numb your pain instead of facing it, it strengthens its grip. But why should you care? Because until you confront your shadow, you are not free. You're simply playing a role, a mask. You are not living. You're surviving, pretending, escaping. And eventually, the mask slips. The shadow is patient. It waits for the moment when you're tired, when your life falls apart, when your ego cracks, and then it steps forward. By then, it's too late to run, but it doesn't have to be. This video is not another motivational fantasy. It's a descent into the unconscious, a journey Jung warned us we must all take. And if you're ready to stop lying to yourself, if you're ready to look in the mirror without blinking, then subscribe now. This channel is not here to comfort you. It's here to expose you and to yourself. The deeper we go, the darker it gets. But somewhere inside that darkness is the power you've been searching for. You don't conquer the shadow by light. You conquer it by understanding it. And now we begin the birth of the shadow, the child you killed. The shadow doesn't begin as something evil. It begins as something pure. A child enters the world unfiltered, unapologetic. It screams when it wants, laughs without reason, and reaches out for what it desires. There is no shame, no fear of judgment, no sense of too much. But then something happens. The child learns a dangerous lesson. Not everything inside you is acceptable. Don't be so loud. Stop crying. Be a good boy. A good girl doesn't do that. Each time you hear those words, a part of you is silenced, not because it was wrong, but because it made others uncomfortable. And so begins the murder of the inner child. You start to carve out the pieces of your soul that don't fit the mold. You bury your anger. You suppress your curiosity. You hide your wildness. You amputate your authenticity in exchange for belonging. And what's left? A performance. You smile when you're dying inside. You agree when you want to scream. You say, "I'm fine," when you're breaking. The pieces you cut off don't disappear. They rot in the basement of your psyche, and that basement has a name: the unconscious. This is the birth of the shadow. Jung wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality. For no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort." Why moral? Because facing your shadow means confronting the parts of yourself you've judged as unworthy, dangerous, even evil. It means admitting you are not only capable of love, but also of hatred. Not only of peace, but of violence. Not only of success, but of sabotage. Most people would rather die than face that. So they distract themselves with work, pleasure, and endless self-help, never realizing they're running in circles, chased by the ghost of the child they abandoned. But here's the brutal truth. The parts of yourself that you reject don't die. They wait. They show up in your addictions, in your toxic relationships, in the moments you can't explain why you're doing what you're doing. That's not weakness, that's your shadow trying to speak. And here's where it gets darker. The shadow isn't just your pain, it's your power. Every time you suppressed your anger, you buried your fire. Every time you repressed your desire, you lost your magnetism. Every time you silenced your truth, you weakened your voice. So the question isn't, how do I kill my shadow? The question is, what part of myself did I kill just to survive? And can you face it now? Because until you do, you will keep chasing goals that don't fulfill you. You will keep sabotaging the things you love. You will keep blaming the world for the war that lives inside you. This is the wound. This is where the shadow was born, the moment you decided to be someone else just to be safe. But safety has a cost, your soul. It's time to remember what you buried. It's time to meet the child you killed, not to fix it, not to shame it, but to bring it home. Only then can healing begin. Only then can the shadow begin to transform. Only then do you begin to live. Masks of the ego, the lie you call self. The ego is a master of illusion. It wears suits, smiles politely, and shakes hands with strangers. It posts the perfect pictures, says the right things, and hides every crack. It convinces the world, and worse, convinces you that the mask is real. But behind the smile is a storm. Behind the eyes is a lie, the person you pretend to be. The ego was built to protect you. As a child, you learned that certain behaviors earned love, and others earned rejection. So, you began to shape yourself, not from authenticity, but from necessity. That shape became your identity. You became the responsible one, the funny one, the strong one, not because that's who you are, but because that's who you had to be. But there's a cost. Every time you play that role, the parts of you that don't fit are pushed into the dark, the rage you're not allowed to express, the sensitivity you were told to hide, the desire you were taught to fear, and that dark, that's your shadow, fed and fattened by the lies of your ego. Jung said, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is." It's a mask so convincing that you forget you're wearing it. But the shadow never forgets. You can feel it when you're alone. That emptiness that creeps in after the performance ends. You can feel it when someone truly sees you, and you panic because they're looking past the mask. You can feel it in moments of rage, lust, fear, when the ego slips and something else takes over. That something is your shadow. Unfiltered, raw, and real. Most people double down on the mask. They polish it, protect it, promote it. But the truth is, your ego is afraid. Afraid that if the world saw who you really are, you'd be rejected again. Afraid that if you stop pretending, everything will collapse. Afraid that if you take off the mask, there will be nothing underneath. That's the ego's greatest fear. That it is hollow, and so it keeps performing. It becomes the overachiever, the pleaser, the controller, just to stay safe. But it's not safety. It's a prison where the real you is screaming behind locked doors. But here's the paradox. The ego is not your enemy, it's your creation. And the only way to free yourself is to confront what you've hidden behind it. Who are you? Without your titles, who are you without your trauma story? Who are you when no one's watching? That answer terrifies the ego, but liberates the soul, because beneath the performance, there is truth. Beneath the persona, there is power. And beneath the ego is you, the real you, not the version you crafted, but the version you were, before the world told you who to be. So ask yourself, what mask are you wearing today? And more importantly, who put it on you? Until you answer that, you're not living, you're acting. And the shadow? It's writing your script, The time is coming when the mask will crack. Whether through crisis, betrayal, loss, the ego cannot hold forever. And when it breaks, you'll meet what's underneath. Will you recognize it? Relationships. Mirrors of your dark side. What if I told you your relationships are not about the other person? What if I told you they're a mirror? A brutal, unfiltered, unmerciful mirror reflecting everything you've refused to see in yourself. Carl Jung warned us, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But most people don't want understanding. They want comfort. They want blame. They want a villain so they can stay the victim. And so we project, we fall in love not with the person, but with the part of our shadow they temporarily silence. And we hate not because they wronged us, but because they awakened the darkness. We buried, that's the secret nobody tells you. The people who trigger you are your greatest teachers. The partner who manipulates you is showing you your fear of abandonment. The friend who betrays you is revealing your own self-betrayal. The lover who withdraws is confronting your dependency. Every relationship becomes an arena, not for connection, but for projection. You don't fight with them. You fight with the version of you they activate. And the more unaware you are of your shadow, the more intense it becomes. That's why love turns to hate. Why intimacy turns to fear, why passion turns to pain, because the mask eventually slips, and what's underneath, the anger, the need, the jealousy, is too much to handle. So we push it back onto them. It's their fault. They're toxic. They made me this way. No, they awaken the version of you you're not ready to face. And here's the twist. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. Especially what you unconsciously are. That's why cycles repeat. You keep dating the same kind of person. You keep falling into the same drama. You keep feeling the same pain, no matter who you're with, because it was never about them. It was always about you. Your shadow chooses your partners, not your heart. Your trauma bonds, not your soul. Your unconscious wounds crave familiarity even if it hurts, and until you become aware of that, you will keep calling suffering love. So what's the solution? Not cutting people off, not reading more relationship advice, not trying to be less emotional. The solution is this. Turn the mirror inward. Ask, what part of me is being reflected? Here, what pain am I avoiding by blaming them? What need is controlling my behavior? That's when relationships become transformative. They stop being a battlefield and become a sacred place for shadow work, because the person in front of you isn't just a partner, a friend, or an enemy. They are a mirror held up to the parts of yourself still waiting to be acknowledged. So the next time you're triggered, don't look away, look deeper, because what you see in them is what you've forgotten in yourself. Self-sabotage, the shadow that destroys your dreams. You say you want to succeed, you set goals, you read the books, you visualize, you hustle, but every time you get close to something real, something important, you destroy it. You ghost the opportunity, you push the person away, you procrastinate until it's too late. Then you tell yourself, the same story, I'm just not ready, maybe it wasn't meant to be, next time. But deep down, you know, you didn't fail, you sabotaged it. And here's the truth most people can't handle. Self-sabotage isn't weakness, it's not laziness, it's not a lack of discipline. It's shadow in disguise, the unconscious parts of you that believe you don't deserve what you're asking for. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You are not cursed, you are not unlucky. You are at war with the parts of yourself that you've refused to face. You say you want love, but your shadow fears intimacy because it once led to pain. You say you want success, but your shadow equates achievement with rejection because it once meant losing connection. You say you want peace, but your shadow feeds on chaos because that's all it's ever known. So the moment things start going well, the shadow panics and it pulls you back with doubt, with fear, with sabotage, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it's trying to protect the version of you that's still wounded. This is the tragic irony. Your shadow sabotages your dreams to protect your trauma. And until you confront that truth, you will continue the cycle, over and over. Different faces, same pain. So how do you break it? Not by forcing more productivity, not by shaming yourself into success, not by pretending you're high vibe. You break the cycle by going into the place you've been avoiding. The wound. The original moment where your worth was questioned. Where your truth was punished, where your identity fractured. Go there, not to relive it, but to reclaim it. Speak to the part of you that still believes you're unworthy. Hold the voice that whispers, you'll mess it up again. Sit with the pain instead of running from it. That's when sabotage loses its power, because you're no longer fighting yourself in the dark. You're bringing light to the places that needed it most. And this is where most people turn away. Because this work isn't comfortable, it's not glamorous, it's not something you can post about. But if you've ever felt that haunting sense of, I'm the one ruining everything, then this work is for you. And if you've made it this far in the video, it means something in you is ready. Not the ego, the soul, the part of you that's tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of watching your own hands destroy what you love. This channel isn't here to motivate you. It's here to mirror you, to expose the truth you already feel but have never dared to speak. So if this is waking something up in you, something real, something raw, subscribe now. Because the next time your shadow strikes, you'll need to remember who you really are, and we're just getting started. Pleasure in pain, why you're drawn to what hurts you, why do you chase what breaks you, why do you return to the same toxic people, the same emotional traps, the same patterns that leave you empty. It's not stupidity, it's not weakness, it's not that you don't learn, it's deeper than that. It's the shadow, the part of you that finds pleasure in pain. Sounds twisted, doesn't it? But look closer. You say you want peace, but chaos feels familiar. You say you want love, but distance feels safe. You say you want freedom, but you sabotage it the moment it arrives. That's not coincidence. That's conditioning. As children, we learned love through pain, affection through tension, approval through suppression. So now, as adults, we confuse pain with passion. We interpret anxiety as chemistry. We equate being wanted with being controlled. We return to the wound, not because we enjoy suffering, but because our shadow believes that suffering is love. This is why you can't just walk away, why you crave the person who destroyed you, why you miss the relationship that almost killed your spirit, because at some level, pain has become your home. Carl Jung understood this darkness. He wrote, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." In other words, the patterns we repeat are attempts to avoid the original wound, but avoiding pain doesn't erase it. It spreads it into your habits, your choices, your relationships. Until eventually, you don't just tolerate pain, you seek it. Not consciously, of course. You say things like, I don't know why this keeps happening to me. But your shadow knows. Your shadow is repeating the pattern until you finally see it, not to torture you, but to free you, because the only way out is through. You must face the moment where pain first became love, the betrayal you normalized, the abandonment you buried, the chaos you memorized, and you must feel it, not avoid it, not numb it, not fix it, feel it. That's how the shadow releases its grip, because what you feel, you heal, and what you suppress controls you. So ask yourself, what pain feels like home? What chaos feels like connection? What wound feels like identity? This is the confrontation most people avoid, because it threatens the stories they've built their entire life around. But if you don't face this now, you'll keep calling dysfunction destiny. You'll keep craving the cage that looks like comfort. You'll keep bleeding on people who didn't cut you. You must rewire what love means to you. Love is not adrenaline. Love is not rescue. Love is not possession. Love is space. Love is truth. Love is peace. Even when it's quiet, your shadow won't like that. It will scream. It will resist. It will try to pull you back into the patterns it knows. But now you know too much. You've seen the loop. You've tasted the illusion. And now you can break it. Not by rejecting your shadow, but by reclaiming the part of you that learned. Pain was all there was. There's something beyond it, but only if you're willing to stop running. The dark night of the soul, when the shadow takes over. There comes a moment in every life when everything collapses, not just outside, but inside. You wake up one day and realize the mask no longer fits. The roles you played feel empty. The beliefs you clung to crumble under the weight of your own truth. This is not depression. This is not burnout. This is something far more ancient, far more dangerous. This is the dark night of the soul. Carl Jung didn't invent this term, but he lived it. He walked away from everything, his identity, his reputation, his mind, and entered the abyss. He wrote, "It is a frightening experience when the ego suffers a defeat. But the shadow must be acknowledged and the inner journey must be made. This isn't spiritual poetry. It's a psychic breakdown. It's a disintegration of who you thought you were, so that something deeper can emerge. And it's terrifying. You question everything. You doubt everyone. You feel lost, unmoored, stripped of certainty. But here's the truth. This is not the end. It's the beginning of a descent, not into madness, but into your unconscious. The beginning of a death, not of life, but of illusion. The beginning of truth. The kind that burns everything false to ash. When the shadow takes over, it doesn't ask politely. It devours your pride, your false positivity, your spiritual bypassing. It shows you what you've been hiding, not just from others, but from yourself. The envy you coated in politeness, the bitterness behind your healing, the control behind your love, and in that raw, unbearable confrontation, you are left with a choice: run back to the mask or walk into the fire. Most run, they numb, they distract, they rebuild the ego and call it growth. But a few stay, they sit in the ashes, they listen to the silence, they watch everything burn, not to be destroyed, but to be revealed. And what emerges is not a new persona, it's you. Not the idea of you, not the socially acceptable version, but the unfiltered, untamed, integrated self, the one who knows their darkness and no longer fears it. That's the gift of the dark night. You stop running because there's nowhere left to go, because the enemy you feared was never out there, because the voice that terrified you was your own, silenced for too long. This is not a phase, it's not a season, it's a rite of passage, one that strips away everything except truth. So if you're in it, if you're there right now, wondering if you're losing your mind, you're not. You're losing your mask, and what waits on the other side is freedom. But first, you must let it all fall apart, because the ego must break before the soul can speak. The inner alchemy. How to reclaim power by integrating the shadow. You've faced the shadow. You've seen how it forms, in rejection, in silence, in survival. You've watched it sabotage your relationships, your purpose, your peace. You've walked through the dark night, stripped of identity, humbled by truth. Now what? Now comes the transformation, not through escape, but through integration. This is the alchemy of the soul, turning darkness into power. Carl Jung never said, "Kill your shadow." He said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow is not your enemy. It is your unclaimed potential. The rage you suppressed is strength without direction. The desire you shamed is passion without purpose. The chaos you avoided is energy without grounding. Every part you buried, every piece you called bad, dangerous, too much, is power waiting to be owned. Integration means going back into the basement of your psyche and turning on the light, not to destroy the shadow, but to speak with it, to ask, what were you protecting? What do you need to be free? What part of me do you represent? And to listen, truly listen, because the moment you stop fearing your shadow, it transforms. What once controlled you now becomes fuel. What once sabotaged you now becomes wisdom. What once haunted you now becomes part of your wholeness. This is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong practice because the shadow grows with you. Each new level of expansion reveals a deeper layer of unconscious resistance. But now, you have the tools. Now you have the awareness. Now, you are no longer ruled by the lie that you must be only light. You are both. You are love and fury, compassion and chaos, clarity and confusion. And when you accept that, when you no longer flinch at your own reflection, you become unstoppable. Not because you're perfect, but because you are whole, and wholeness is power. So how do you live this truth? You stop apologizing for your intensity. You stop shaming your darkness. You stop chasing light and start becoming it from the inside out. This is the real awakening, not floating above your pain, but walking through it with your head high. Not pretending to be healed, but facing your fractures and loving them back to life, not conquering the shadow, but integrating it. That is the path of the warrior, the mystic, the alchemist, the one who has died 1,000 ego deaths and still chooses to rise. Because in the end, it was never about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who you were. Before the world taught you to hide, are you ready to truly see yourself? You've seen what most never dare to face, not because they can't, but because they're not ready to give up the illusion. But you've walked through the fire. You've stared into the mirror without turning away. You've heard the voice beneath the noise, and maybe for the first time, you felt something ancient, familiar. You, not the mask. Not the role, not the wounded child, but the full, fractured, luminous self, shadow and all. This is not the end. It's the beginning of a deeper life, one where you stop running from what haunts you and start listening to what it's trying to teach you, because everything you hate in yourself is a doorway. Everything you avoid is a compass. Everything you've buried is a treasure. Carl Jung didn't want us to destroy the darkness. He wanted us to hold it, to bring it home, to become whole. That is your task now. Not perfection, not healing in a straight line, but truth. Raw, brutal, liberating truth. You are not just your light. You are not just your trauma. You are the dance between both, the battlefield and the bridge. And if this video spoke to something in you, something you thought was broken, or lost, or cursed, then this is your space. This channel exists for one reason: to pull the truth from the shadows. So if you're ready to walk that path, not as a trend, but as a transformation, subscribe now. Because the journey doesn't end here. It only deepens. And remember, the more light you shine, the darker the shadow becomes, but the stronger you are to face it.